We all know Croatia for its sun-drenched islands and ancient stone towns. But tucked behind that postcard is a beach that reshapes itself, lakes that grow waterfalls, and a wall so long it once guarded a whole peninsula. Zlatni Rat bends with currents, Plitvice builds its own travertine staircases, and Stone's fortifications still surprise visitors. Come with me as we trace rivers through canyons, drift between secluded islands, and climb fairy tale castles to reveal Croatia's stranger stories. Zlatni Rat is one of the planet's rare movable beaches, its slender horn visibly shifting with currents and winds along Brač's coast. Do you know Zlatni Rat's tip can swing hundreds of meters between seasons, pointing west, east, or south, depending on wind patterns and sea currents? That living shoreline is not just picturesque. It records the invisible dialogue between Adriatic currents and Mediterranean storms. Visitors feel it in the sand underfoot as the spit subtly rebuilds itself after each swell, reshaping the coastline like a slow, patient hand. The pebble beach graduates from bright, sun-bleached stones to deeper, polished stone tones, where the waves sculpt each grain. Beneath those pebbles, the seabed drops away into clear sapphire water that reveals underwater meadows and ancient rock formations. On calm days, the Horn splits the sea into two distinct moods: glassy shallows perfect for families, and a windward flank beloved by windsurfers. Local sailors have long used Zlatni Rat's shifting face as a navigational marker, timing passages around its seasonal changes the seas. Stroll from the narrow promontory inland, and you meet pine groves that scent the air with resin and citrus, a fragrant buffer between beach and village. Those pines shelter small cafes and stone paths leading to Vidova Gora, whose summit offers a panorama that explains why the spit looks sculpted from a map. Geologists point to the interplay of longshore drift, storm surges, and the unique composition of Brač's pebbles to explain its continual remaking. Yet for many, Zlatni Rat is felt rather than analyzed, a place where the sea seems to choose a new identity each season. When the wind shifts, surfers hoist sails, and the entire spit becomes a living playground, while photographers chase the fleeting silhouette of its tip. As evening falls, the low sun turns the stones to molten gold. The reason locals once named it the Golden Cape. Walk the length of the Horn, and you traverse a miniature world. From sheltered shallows to exposed tip, each step a lesson in coastal dynamics. Stay long enough, and you begin to read its seasons. Winter's overhaul, spring's gentle rebuild, summer's crowded celebration, and understand why Zlatny Rat is a geological story you can walk across. Grozny perches on a limestone ridge in central Istria. Its cobbled lanes and stone houses framing views of vineyards and olive groves that shimmer in a light found in very few places on Earth. Do you know that Grozny's walls cradle more than 50 active galleries and studios in a single village, making it one of the densest artistic communities per square kilometer in Europe? Stone staircases climb between ivy-draped homes where musicians rehearse in converted cellars and painters set up easels in sunlit courtyards, turning everyday alleys into open-air ateliers. The rhythm of footsteps here mixes with distant church bells and the soft clink of espresso cups, a soundtrack that has drawn creatives since the 1960s. Winter in Grozny is quiet and close, the fog settling low over the Mirna Valley, while spring explodes in wildflowers that spill down the slopes toward neighboring olive groves. Summers, by contrast, transform the village into a festival of sound and color during its renowned Jazz Week, when narrow streets fill with improvised concerts and international visitors. Many of the houses still bear frescoes and carved lintels from Venetian and Austro-Hungarian times, a visible thread of history woven into contemporary life. Local families speak both Croatian and Italian, preserving recipes and dialects that have persisted through centuries of changing borders. Walk past the tiny church of St. Jerome to a viewpoint where terraced fields and cork oaks spill toward the Adriatic, and you can almost trace the roads truffle hunters take into the oak woods nearby. Artisans here harvest not only imagination, but also the land. Olive oil presses and small wineries offer raw, textured flavors unique to this microregion. Grozny's intimacy invites slow discovery. Shopfronts display hand-carved wood, watercolor studies, ceramic tiles, each doorway a new story that leads naturally to the hilltop town of Motovun, where truffles and medieval ramparts continue the Istrian narrative. The path between these towns winds across limestone and vineyards, linking cultural pulse points that together reveal the hidden heart of the hill country. Zrmanja River Canyon in Croatia cuts through white karst to create rare travertine steps and emerald pools that mirror the Adriatic light. Do you know Zrmanja still builds new tufa barriers today? A living geology lesson you can paddle through. Its water runs cold and clear, carrying mineral whispers from subterranean springs into deep mirror-like pools. Kayakers slip between sheer limestone walls, passing hidden cascades that look like miniature Perilous falls, but without the crowds. In spring, curtains of water spill over mossy ledges, and the sunlight turns the river into bands of jade and turquoise. Beneath the surface, endemic trout dart through submerged channels carved over millennia, testament to a river that refuses to still. Old stone mills and out-of-the-way villages cling to the canyon rim, their histories braided with Ottoman roads and shepherding routes. From the remote pools you can trace Zermanja's path toward the Novigrad Sea, where its freshwater kisses the Adriatic, near Zadar. Geologists come for the travertine terraces. Birdwatchers follow the cliffs where peregrine falcons nest on invisible ledges. Local guides will tell you of secluded springs and cave entrances that reveal fossils and fossilized riverbeds frozen like pages in stone. Compared to Croatia's famous coastlines, Zermanja feels like a secret sequel, a wild inland chapter that connects to the sea. Its secluded lanes and river loops lead naturally from the karst highlands toward the sun-drenched islands, making it a bridge between two worlds. Visit at dawn, and mist will rise like smoke through narrow gorges, swallowing your footsteps and leaving only the river's voice. Stand on an ancient bridge, and the canyon explains itself in echoes, every splash repeated back, with a clarity that seems almost unnatural. Conservationists praise Zermanja because its fragile travertine formations can be destroyed by careless tourism. Yet here restraint keeps it vividly alive. So as you map Croatia's highlights, let the canyon be the quiet connector that ties the rugged interior to the glittering Adriatic. Nestled beside one of Croatia's few surviving glacial lakes, Trakošćan Castle rises above a mirror-like basin formed during the last ice age. Do you know that the lake at Trakošćan is fed by an underground spring that keeps its temperature steady year-round? Built in the 13th century as a fortified stronghold, the castle was transformed into a romantic residence in the 19th century, its turrets and battlements preserved like pages of a living storybook. Inside, original furnishings, hunting trophies, and portraits trace the life of the Drašković family, who shaped much of northern Croatia's cultural landscape. Walking the winding path from the lakeshore up to the keep, visitors cross bridges and mice groves where mist clings to beech and oak in the morning light. From the ramparts, the panorama sweeps over the gently folded hills that link Trakošćan to the Baroque streets of nearby Varaždin, hinting at a route pilgrims and nobles once traveled. castle's museum curates artifacts not only of aristocratic life, but of rural craft and folklore, connecting local traditions to Croatia's wider historical tapestry. Each room tells a chapter: military armaments that speak of border skirmishes, lacquered cabinets from Vienna, and maps that plot centuries of shifting domains. Beyond its walls, the estate's park was designed as an English landscape garden, meant to blend wildness with intentional sightlines toward the lake. When you leave Tracoscan, the road unwinds through vineyards and small towns that carry threads of the same history, a living map from castle to capital. Holding this place in your memories changes how you see Croatia, not just as coastline and islands, but as layered inland landscapes where quiet castles guard long stories. In the next segment, we follow one of those roads into Varaždin, where Baroque facades and street festivals continue the cultural conversation started at Tracoscan. But for now, imagine standing on the battlements as swans glide across the lake and centuries fold under your feet. Millet Island is one of the very few Mediterranean islands with two saltwater lakes, Veliko and Malo Jezero, creating an inland maritime landscape found almost nowhere else. Do you know Millet's Veliko Jezero shelters a tiny islet with a 12th century Benedictine monastery that seems to float in emerald water? The island's dense pine forests and karst cliffs conceal ancient shepherd trails that lead to hidden coves and olive terraces. A network of cycle paths and quiet lanes connects those trails to the island's stone villages where generations shaped the land without heavy industry. Saltwater seepage links the lakes to the open Adriatic through submerged channels, which keeps marine life thriving and lends the lakes unusual clarity. You can kayak silently between reeds, watching octopus and mullet glide beneath the surface while centuries-old pine roots hang overhead. On the islet of Sveta Maria, monks once tended vineyards and orchards, and their Romanesque monastery still echoes with layers of silence and prayer. Local guides tell stories of shipwrecked sailors finding refuge there, while fishermen still use traditional nets along the inlet's rim. Millet connects to mainland ports by regular ferries, making it a quiet detour from the bustling stone streets of Dubrovnik and the vineyards of Pelješac. That easy link means you can fold Mulliot into a day of island hopping, moving from medieval towns to untouched nature with remarkable speed. In spring, rare endemic flowers carpet the meadows, and migrating birds pause on the lakeshore, turning the island into a secret ornithological stopover. Researchers have cataloged species here that are vanishing elsewhere, making Mulliot an involuntary refuge for Mediterranean biodiversity. Nighttime on Mulliot is another rarity. With minimal light pollution, the Milky Way spills across the skies uninterrupted by neon or highway glare. Locals will tell you the silence is almost a presence, an invitation to listen to waves and cicadas as if for the first time. Conservation efforts by the national park ensure that development stays modest and paths remain liminal between cultivated land and primeval forest. That balance keeps the island accessible yet fragile, asking visitors to tread lightly and honor long-established rhythms. A single cafe by Polache mirrors centuries of maritime trade, where aromas of fresh fish link directly to sailors who anchored ancient galleys there. From Polache, it's a short ride to Pomene and Babino Polje, each village unfolding a new chapter of Mulliot's human story. Spend a day circling the lakes, and you'll find that Mulliot compresses centuries of natural and human history into a few luminous miles. By the time you leave, the island's quiet intensity will have rewritten your idea of Mediterranean islands altogether. Hidden at the mouth of the Cetina River, Omish guards one of Europe's rarest coastal canyons, where river and sea collide in a dramatic narrow gorge. Do you know that for centuries, this town's cliffs harbored pirates who controlled Adriatic trade with swift secret raids from Fortica and Mirabella? Stone streets tumble down from medieval fortresses to pebble shores, where fishermen still mend nets the way their ancestors did. The Cetina's turquoise waters carve a path through limestone cliffs, just meters from the town, feeding hidden pools and waterfalls upstream that few tourists find. Omish earned its fearsome reputation in the Middle Ages, its pirate fleet snatching prizes and escaping inland through secret mountain trails. Today, visitors can climb the rickets of Fortica for a panorama that sweeps from the Riviera to the jagged islands like Brach beyond the bay. But the town is not frozen in legend. It pulses with modern adventure as kayakers and rafters launch into the Cetina's Whitewater Gorge. Local guides lead canyoning trips into caverns where ancient shepherds carved stone shelters and olive terraces cling to impossibly steep slopes. Omish's compact size makes it a perfect chapter in a Dalmatian itinerary, a living museum where adrenaline sports and ancient stone coexist. From here, the road winds up into the Cetina Canyon, or down to Split's Grand Roman Pass, making Omish the hinge between island beaches and continental canyons. Its stories are stubborn. Even the oldest houses bear bullet marks and inscriptions that whisper of sieges, alliance, and seaborne triumphs. And as you leave the harbor, the town's silhouette recedes, but its mixture of danger, beauty, and stubborn culture follows you like an echo. Omish may be small, but its cliffs and currents have shaped empires, festivals, and the very routes sailors chose for centuries. Next, we'll cross the water to the sun-baked beaches of Brach and follow the stones that built a republic, uncovering another secret of the Adriatic. Brijuni National Park hosts one of Europe's rare coastal subtropical microclimates, where ancient olive groves thrive beside Mediterranean maquis. Do you know, Brijuni was transformed into Tito's private island retreat, where he collected exotic animals and hosted world leaders. Beyond the presidential villas lie Roman villas and mosaic floors that reveal layers of Mediterranean civilization. Walking the island paths, you encounter prehistoric dolmens and Byzantine ruins that stitch time together into a living museum. The archipelago's sheltered bays hide wrecks and underwater karst channels that make it a diver's archaeological playground. Marine meadows of Poseidonia and rare sponge gardens support a surprising diversity of fish and migratory birds. A small safari park on Veliki Brijun preserves zebras, antelopes, and even a pair of Indian rhinos, once gifted to the state. These exotic inhabitants echo the island's diplomatic history and make Brijuni one of Europe's most unusual wildlife refuges. Conservation here blends archaeology, history, and ecology. Projects protect Roman mosaics while restoring native forests and seabeds. Guided tours reveal how human hands shaped the landscape, from Venetian vineyards to Austro-Hungarian hunting lodges. Stone quarries once supplied Istria's famous limestone, and those same stones frame Perilous' nearby Roman amphitheater. A short ferry from Fajana connects visitors to Pula, knitting Brijuni into a broader Istrian story of empire and seas. Seasonal flocks of flamingos and rare raptors arrive to roost, turning wetlands into hidden birdwatching stations. Researchers catalog endemic beetles and butterflies that only persist where traditional grazing and coastal meadows survive. Local legend whispers of submerged villas and wine amphorae, still resting on silty floors waiting to tell their tales. Tonight, the island keeps its hush. Tomorrow, it opens another chapter as we sail back toward mainland harbors. To understand Croatia's coastal soul, you must read Brijuni's layered pieces, natural, human, and strangely diplomatic. From here, we'll carry that story ashore toward Pula's stone theaters and Istria's hilltop villages, where the island's echoes remain audible. Krka National Park protects a string of travertine waterfalls and emerald pools along the Krka River, a rare karst water system in Europe. Do you know the park shelters Visovac, a tiny island monastery that seems to float amid turquoise waters and centuries of forested cliffs? From the thunderous spectacle of Skredinsky Buk, the river slips into tranquil channels where willows and water lilies drift. Visitors trace stone footpaths that bridge mossy cascades, following the same route fishermen and monks have used for generations. Skredinsky Buk itself is a living sculpture of travertine, built by mineral-rich waters that deposit limestone and slowly reshape the landscape. Those porous barriers trap sediment and create pools that host rare amphibians and insects found almost nowhere else. A short boat ride cuts through shimmering reflections to Visovac, where manuscripts and olives tell stories of pilgrims and Serville. Beyond the island, The river narrows and tumbles at Roshki Slap, where the falls break into dozens of smaller ribbons over polished rock. Each fall offers a different soundscape, a deep drum at Skradinsky Buk, and a delicate chime amid the pools at Roshki Slap. Walkways went close enough to feel the spray, and every turn reveals another secret cove or frescoed chapel tucked into limestone. In spring, the surge swells the river, accelerating travertine growth and sending a rush that redraws the shoreline overnight. In summer, mirror flat pools reflect orchids and soaring eagles, making the park feel less like a park and more like a living atlas. Beyond the waterfalls, traditional mills stand frozen in time, their wooden gears once powered by the same currents that shaped the falls. Local guides point to centuries-old stone villages where olive terraces slope down to the water, linking human history to the river's rhythms. The Kirka experience is stitched together. The roar of Skradinsky Buk leads to the hush of Visovak and the patterned cascades of Roshki Slap. Follow its course, and you will see how geology, ecology, and human culture have woven themselves into a landscape unlike most anywhere else. To enter Kirka is to read pages of living geology with each pool and cliff, offering a new paragraph in the story of the Adriatic hinterland. Stay with us as we move downstream to Šibenik, where the river meets the sea, and stone fortresses keep watch over centuries of maritime tiles. Velebit Mountain in Croatia cradles one of Europe's last intact karst plateaus, sheltering an extraordinary concentration of endemic plants and animals found nowhere else. Do you know Velebit channels sea fog up its limestone ridges, creating microclimates that support cloud-dependent mosses and lichens unique to this range? Walk its ridgelines, and you'll encounter ancient beech forests that drop abruptly into jagged cliffs and high alpine meadows, as if multiple ecosystems were stitched together. Beneath those cliffs lie cave networks, especially in northern Velebit, where subterranean lakes host troglobitic species that evolved in complete isolation. In Paklenica National Park, narrow gorges cut dizzying corridors through Velebit's heart, attracting climbers and the rare griffin vulture that nests on sheer faces. From those gorges, the landscape sweeps toward the Adriatic as karst springs feed crystal rivers that braid into coastal bays and hidden coves. Local shepherds still follow ancient transhumance routes, tending flocks on highland pastures that are living archives of traditional land use. Their stone huts and trails thread Velebit into the wider Dinaric web, linking it visually and ecologically to Plitvice's waters and Dalmatian islands. At dawn, the ridge can summon a sea of clouds below, with islands emerging like distant continents, a spectacle born of Velebit's unique topography. Scientists monitor these microclimates because small changes here often signal broader climatic shifts across the Adriatic basin. Hidden herbalists harvest endemic medicinal plants that cling to limestone ledges, knowledge quietly passed down through generations. This blend of human tradition and wild isolation is why parts of Velebit are recognized as biosphere reserves by UNESCO. Yet much of Velebit remains off the tourist maps, its narrow, weather-worn trails rewarding those who seek solitude with startling panoramas. Follow a ridge and it will lead your eye from karst moonscapes down to Dalmatian shores and ancient ports that once traded beneath these peaks. In winter, avalanches sculpt fresh faces on slopes, leaving patterns geologists read for clues about the region's long geological story. In summer, wildflowers carpet meadows in dense colors, a living mosaic of endemics and migrants that bind mountain to sea. So when you think you've seen Croatia's coastline, remember Velebit, this rugged backbone quietly forged islands, rivers, and weather systems that shape the Adriatic. Plitvice Lakes National Park holds one of the world's most extraordinary travertine terrace systems, where mineral-rich waters build natural dams that rearrange the landscape over decades. Do you know Plitvice's travertine barriers are created by tiny organisms and mosses that precipitate calcium carbonate, meaning the park is literally growing new rock as you watch. Walk the wooden footbridges and you traverse living geology, where waterfalls cascade between 16 interconnected lakes that shift hue from azure to emerald, depending on sunlight and mineral content. Beneath those colors, more than 90 cave systems and underground streams feed the lakes, creating a hidden underworld that scientists still map and debate. In winter, some falls freeze into sculptural curtains of ice, and in spring the meltwater can reroute channels, demonstrating how dynamic the park remains through the seasons. Birds like the peregrine and rare mammals such as brown bears and lynx Use the surrounding beach forests, linking the aquatic spectacle to a vast living ecosystem. What few visitors expect is that Plitvicka's waters contain living mats of bacteria that accelerate tufa formation, a process visible over human timescales and studied by ecologists worldwide. Centuries-old records show how paths of water have migrated, slicing new cascades and sealing old ones until the park's map looks markedly different from early photographs. The park's UNESCO listing protects not just scenic vistas, but this active geological laboratory where conservation balances tourism and natural change. Local villages, like the nearby Rastoki, were shaped by the same hydrology, their millworks and bridges woven into the same story of rivers and stone. A single plank bridge can feel like stepping into a painting, yet every step must respect fragile travertine that can crumble if vegetation is disturbed. Guides will tell you that the best time to see the lakes is when light and mineral flows align, revealing colors so surreal they almost seem engineered. By following the creek beds down from Plitvice, water eventually threads toward the Adriatic, linking this inland wonder to the coastal landscapes that define Croatia's coastline. So when you leave the terraces and cross toward Dalmatia, you carry the memory of living stone and water that continue to sculpt the country. Photographers chase the changing light from sunrise mists to sunset gold, each hour revealing a new face of Plitvicka's living palimpsest. And if you thought waterfalls were static, come here and watch an entire landscape rewrite itself. Then follow the water as it carries that story toward the sea. Perilous Nature Park cradles Mir, a salt lake sealed from the sea whose hypersaline waters preserve life forms found almost nowhere else on Earth. Do you know that in Perilous the vertical limestone walls plunge so steeply that they create microclimates, sheltering rare Mediterranean flora and migratory birds? Wind-shaped bays, hidden sea caves, and salt-washed terraces make this stretch of Dugi Otok a living laboratory for evolution and erosion. Skippers and divers long have navigated here, not only for shelter, but for the dizzying clarity of water, where seagrass meadows and sponge gardens teem with life. On calm mornings, you can see the park's mirror-like lake, contrasting sharply with the cobalt of the open Adriatic, a visual riddle that hints at centuries of geological drama. Fishermen still tell stories of ancient boats slipping silently into secluded coves that appear on no modern map, remnants of a coastline that keeps its secrets. From the top of the cliffs, the archipelago unfolds into countless white islets, the nearby Kornati group, whose stony shapes seem almost sculpted by wind and salt. That proximity turned Telachtitsa into a quiet guardian of biodiversity, where land and sea trade species in a delicate, endangered balance. Beneath the surface, caves shelter sponges and corals, while above, wild orchids and endemic grasses cling to impossible ledges. Researchers who study the park have discovered microhabitats that support species found nowhere else in the Adriatic. Walking the rim feels like moving along a living map of time. Fossil layers, abrupt fault lines, and terraces that record ancient sea levels. Every step connects to a maritime history of sailors, salt harvesters, and islanders whose lives were shaped by these same rocks and currents. The park's management balances human tradition with strict protections, inviting visitors to experience its wonders while preserving the fragile chemistry of Mir and the clarity of the surrounding sea. A short boat ride from local harbors folds Telachtitsa into a larger voyage, a chain of islands where each inlet leads to another secret waiting to be read. As sun slides down, the cliffs cast long shadows that change the color of the water and reveal subtle currents of life below. A nightly transformation few places can match. By the end of this chapter, you'll understand why Telachtitsa is not just a park, but a rare junction where geology, biology, and human history collide. The walls of stone hug the Pelješac Peninsula and protect some of the world's oldest continuously operated salt pans, a rare living landscape found in only a handful of places globally. Do you know the walls of stone cradle medieval salt beds that have produced salt for centuries, and that their stone ramparts still guard the tiny towns of Stone and Molly-Stone? Built by the Republic of Ragusa to shield its valuable salt trade, these fortifications stretch for more than 5 kilometers across limestone ridges, folding into the coastline like a sleeping dragon. Walk the ramparts, and you can see salt pans mirrored in calm water, oyster farms shimmering below, and vineyards climbing toward Pelješac's ridges, each element linked by a thread of maritime commerce. The walls are not merely stone. They are a living map of medieval engineering, with gates, bastions, and watchtowers arranged to control both sea accesses and inland routes. Centuries of repairs and reconstructions have woven together Roman, Venetian, and local techniques, creating an ungual architectural palimpsest that still protects a working landscape. From stone, You can follow narrow roads to Molly-Stone, where tiny salted lagoons meet oyster beds famous across the Adriatic. Fishermen and salt workers still trade in goods the walls once defended, and their livelihoods trace a direct line from medieval guilds to today's artisans. In storms, the ramparts become a sheltering spine, while in summer, they offer panoramic views that shift from silver salt pans to the Indigo Sea and the green terraces of Pelgashuk vineyards. These views connect Ston with nearby Dubrovnik, whose prosperity once depended on the salt, and whose merchants paid for these fortifications. Exploring the walls reveals hidden stairways, ruined chapels, and inscriptions that whisper about ancient taxes, sieges, and marriages that shaped the region. And just beyond, small family-run salt pans continue age-old techniques, scooping crystalline harvests by hand, as if time had paused within the wall's shadow. To walk here is to follow a tangible thread through Croatia's coastal history, where geology, trade, and human craft converge behind one of Europe's longest preserved fortress systems. Stay with us, and you'll discover how these walls link to the vineyards, islands, and coastal towns that define the Adriatic's mysterious charm. Beneath the Adriatic's glassy surface, Croatia's Mljet National Park hides saltwater lakes, linked to the sea through rare subterranean channels, a phenomenon found in only a handful of places worldwide. Do you know that the karst rivers feeding Plitvice lakes re-emerge after traveling unseen through limestone caverns, creating tiers of waterfalls that keep shifting and regenerating? From the cascading terraces of Plitvice to the thunderous falls of Krka, water shapes Croatia's spine and the stories of its towns. The marble streets of Split grew from Roman ambition, while Dubrovnik's walls were fortified by maritime storms and centuries of trade. Sail north into the labyrinth of Kornati, and you meet raw, wind-sculpted islands where ancient shepherding meets modern silence. Savor Hvar's lavender and vineyards that blur into the sea. Then drift south to the pine-draped coves of Muljet and the myth-steeped caves of Biokovo. In Istria, truffle hunters still follow dogs through oak forests the way their grandparents did, then drive onward into the Venetian mosaics of Rovinj. Zagreb's cobbled lanes hide avant-garde galleries and cafes that pulse beneath the capital's historic skin, offering a different pulse from coastal calm. Every path links to another. The Velebit Mountains feed rivers that birthed karst phenomena. The sea carries olive seeds from islet to shore, and human hands have shaped stone into terraced fields and fortresses that read like a living atlas. By tracing these threads, you can follow water into caves, climb from Roman ruins into Renaissance palaces, and sail from secluded bays to bustling ancient ports and begin to understand Croatia as a single, connected story. Yet for all its familiar postcards, there are still hidden contrasts. Subterranean salt lakes, islands that bloom twice, wartime scars braided into cultural resilience, and villages where ancient dialects survive. In the end, Croatia doesn't resolve into one image, but invites you to keep asking questions about what carved these coasts, who tended these terraces, and which small harbors will surprise you next. So leave room for curiosity and plan to lose your itinerary to discovery, because the next cove, cave, or cafe might rewrite everything you thought you knew. This is not the final word, but the first impulse to return, explore deeper, and uncover the quiet wonders that make Croatia endlessly connective and ever more mysterious.